Today's youth need teachers, volunteers, and most of all, well, they need you. I'm Doug Edwards, and I'm going to be talking with real youth mentors and students to give you the knowledge you need to be the best youth worker possible. This is Youth Worker on Fire.
Oh, you're trying to bring me down and run me out of town. You're taking what you want, but you can't take my rhythm now. I'm walking to my own beat, just gonna be me. I'm not replicating nobody.
We love it when people don't tell our stuff, but it seldom happens. Have you found that out? That every time you think you've got someone who's really confidential, they'll slip up somewhere because they're telling somebody something about you or about something else that they are not supposed to tell because they think that person's confidential. You told them because you thought they were confidential about your stuff. You found out it wasn't true. There are just not many people that are. And so recently I sent a video to a church event out of state. No, not the one I served in locally for many years. These people asked me to speak, and I asked if I could send a video if I could not show up. And I found out in my schedule I couldn't. So they said yes, so I did. I found out the new pastor decided not to use it because it was too long. At least that's what I was told at first. And then as we were talking, not the new pastor, but the other friends of mine who were handling it, that it was told to me by them that he was going to tell people what I said in the video. I asked that he say nothing about the video or me because something didn't feel right. You know what that feeling like you get like something's just not right here. I have a feeling that he might not have liked something I said. I am not sure what it was. Maybe I have a couple of ideas. But then I was told, no, he's going to do that anyway, without my consent. And I said, well, I'd really like him not to, but we left it at that. So what's the big deal? Well, that's a great question. Well, pastors and people in general really like to change words up for their benefit. I've had more pastors in public say things that I said, that I didn't say. Now, there's a couple that have really built me up and have said some great things, and they're people I really appreciate. And I don't have any worries about what they say about me because I know that they're going to have my best interest at heart. And they're going to say favorable things. We all want that. As a whole, not only do people say wrongly what other people say, or their intent, that is, but very few people or pastors, and I hate to say this, I'm a pastor. I hate to say this about pastors, but I want people to be aware just because you're talking to a pastor doesn't mean things are going to be confidential. People are just not truly confidential. They don't hold everything in. I tell people there's going to be things I take to my grave that people are just never going to know about other people what I know. Why? Because well, here's the scripture, do unto others as you'd have them do to you. You know, do you want them to give up your confidences? No, then don't do that to them. You know, that's between them and God unless, and we'll get into the unless in a minute. So if you did one thing in your ministry or life, it would be this. Be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Now, I've said this scripture over and over. In other words, as in the medical field, it says this, do no harm. So in ministry, our main thought should be do no harm. Do not share ever confidences or you have labeled yourself as an unsafe person. Now, you may have never heard that phrase before, but that's the best way to label it. Are you safe? And if you share people's thoughts and confidences, you're not safe. You're an unsafe person. I had one rule which I told my family, staff, and students. Everything is confidential that you tell me, unless it means life or death. Then all bets are off because we're going to save life. Otherwise, they could count on me to keep my mouth shut, which is really funny. I think people understand that most pastors and most people are not confidential because they won't come to me about a lot of things. But it's so funny because they will go to other people who will not keep their confidences, but who they had rather talk to, even if they give that confidence up. And most find out that if they had only come to me to talk, at least they could have gotten it out. Because over time, they knew that I would keep my mouth closed. It is a rare person who can keep confidences. You know what? If you're a lawyer or a doctor and you break a confidence, you can go to jail. You can lose your license to practice. In other words, you lose your money, your ability to support your family or pay your bills. But as pastors, we feel free to share stories without asking permission, and especially asking privately. Some pastors I've heard say from the pulpit, "Oh, by the way, you don't mind if I share this, do you?" Are you kidding me? Have you thought things through? Of course they mind. What are we going to say at that point in public? Pastors and teachers have lost the respect and confidence and respect of their families because of sharing embarrassing stories about their children or spouse from the pulpit or in public. The one thing that my children can say is I tried to never, ever, unless I knew it was okay with them, to share anything that was going to embarrass them. Why? Because I don't like to be embarrassed. What about you? Maybe you love being embarrassed. Well, then good for you. But don't hand that off to everybody else and think that it's okay. It's just not. It doesn't look good. It doesn't set right. And it hurts the rest of us who are pastors, who are trying to keep confidence and trying to help people so that they can talk freely. People believe the pastors tell these stories and that it must be okay with their families. But instead, many of them have lost the confidence of their children and made their children very angry, and their spouses very angry. Some have even lost their families through some of these things. Maybe not many, but enough. One is too many. If you have great problems and you come to me, I'll lead you to the right therapist, to the right doctor or lawyer, because I'm not a therapist, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not a lawyer. But first, what I'm going to do is ask you if I can pray for you, because God had all the answers. I remember by a guy by the name of Dawson McAllister who had this great Bible study, and he was a youth pastor for many years. He developed this material, and he took it on the road, and thousands of us would show up to go through the books. Literally, the students would buy the book, we'd take them, and we would go through that entire book in a weekend. It would have blanks for you to, write in the answers. And it was pure scripture as well as pure situations that people go through. So make sure that confidentiality, being confidential, is high on your priority list. And take in consideration that when you are not confidential, you don't look good and you don't sound good. Why are some of the greatest communicators the greatest communicators? Because they know that they need to ask permission, not from the pulpit, but way in advance before they speak. The best times I spoke is when I would have people go over what I was going to say with me. And the greatest communicators have a team of people that will help them write what they're going to say. They will go over it, and they will actually do the speech and leave out the things that are not effective. If it's not worth saying, then don't say it. In other words, be confidential. Be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Do no harm. Think about Christ as the loving, kind shepherd, and that we're supposed to be like him. And be gentle. Be careful about people's feelings and embarrassments. I remember Doug Fields, who had a youth group of about 2,000 high schoolers. Of course, he was in a church of almost 40,000 people. He said, "You know what? I lost some students because of my dry and sarcastic humor." He said, "Sometimes I would run off brand new students." He said, I had to learn to pull back that sarcasm. The same thing with confidentiality, being confidential. Pull back. Think ahead. Don't say things that you don't have permission to say. And love the people. Love your family. The biggest witness you have is the family that you're raising. And if they love you, most people will love you because they see that that's who you really are. So why did I talk about Dawson McAllister? And here was the bottom line. In one of his seminars where we went through the books, he said this: when students or families come to me and we go over a problem that they're having, he said, I would say to them, I don't have the answer to your problems. He said, but God does. And so may I pray for you right now and see if God will give us the answer to what you're going through. And usually the answer was yes. The big deal is that we love one another. The world will know us by our love for one another. And how do we love each other? By respecting and being confidential with other people's secrets and things they're not ready to share yet in this world. Have a great weekend, a great day. Until next time, Youth Worker on Fire, we're out.
You've been listening to the Youth Worker on Fire podcast. If you like what you hear, please subscribe and tell your friends. Also, leave a comment and tell us what you think. Stay tuned for more informative episodes.